All right, well, you recorded. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome, everyone. I'm so excited that you are here talking about adult learning theory. Lord knows there's a lot to talk about when it comes to adults and how they like to learn. Many of you I already know. For those of you I don't know, I am Nicole Zumpano. I am the Director of Distance Learning here at Triton. It's a newer position. So I've been here 6 months. I am also an adjunct instructor. I teach at Michigan State, Dominican down the street, and at National Louis. And I bring that up because I've got a lot of work samples from my courses, just so that you have that background information. So why we're here this afternoon, we are going to talk about strategies that we know that we can actually use with different levels of students, whether they are fresh into college or a little bit seasoned into college. And interestingly, I've given this presentation plenty of times before. In my old life, I was involved in instructional technology coaching. So even when you're working with your peers and your committees and your colleagues, a lot of these principles will be very applicable to you. We're also going to take a little bit of a deep dive to understand common characteristics associated with adults, different generations, because again, as we get into it, you'll see there's a lot you need to keep in mind with generational teaching as well. With that, I've given everyone, I think, a handout. The handout mimics my presentation. So you don't need to worry about scribbling things down because all of the advice that I've given to you, it's already there in the handout. In each little area, I did leave a blank notes page. I'm just tactile. I like to write also. So I just have that for you. You're going to see that as we get into these learning theories, there's a lot of crossovers. So a lot of the examples I'll give you, they can work for different things that I'm talking about, but I've only listed them once. Just keep that in mind. And again, as I mentioned, applicable with students, in training, working with adults, and so on. So as we get into our Gogies, there are 3 Gogies that we actually think about in education, with the main difference being their purpose and the role of the learner. That's the main thing with the Gogie. Most of us as educators are familiar with pedagogy. And with pedagogy, that is teacher-centered learning, where it's the teacher that determines what is going to be taught. So the learning is extrinsic because somebody is telling us what we need to learn, and we have to provide that back to them. Pedagogy is very content-centered as well. So that's why we have English classes and math classes and social studies classes and so on. It's very centered on the actual content. Pedagogy, on the other hand, is the complete opposite. It is student-centered. So the student decides what they're going to learn and what resources they're going to use to learn what they want. And in this particular instance, a teacher could be a resource. So this could be your graduate student who's going back to school. They're determining what they're going to learn for the most part, and they can use their teacher as a resource. With pedagogy, it's very intrinsic based because we are deciding what we want to learn. And because of that, a lot of times we are learning to solve problems, whether it's to get better at our job or to learn skills to get a new job. We are trying to solve a problem. And then we come to the sweet spot with andragogy. Andragogy is our 3rd Gogie, and that is adult-centered. That's essentially opportunities for adults to be pedagogical. So again, where somebody is telling us this is what you need to learn, you're going to learn it now. Or it could be pedagogical, where we're saying, hey, we're going to go off and take this crocheting class because it's just something we want to do. Or it can be a combination of the both. So I've already presented on pedagogy. We talked about Gen Z for that. We're going to cover andragogy today, adult learning theory, and then pedagogy. I do have a session on this. I'm sorry, I didn't put the dates in, but it's in the catalog. That one's going to talk a lot about choice and assignments. You're going to see some of the same materials here that you'll see there. But again, I'd encourage you, if you're interested, to come in. So, andragogy and adult learning theory. This comes from Malcolm Knowles, who is considered the father of andragogy. He wrote a book called The Adult Learner, and in that he outlined different principles for how he felt adults learn best. He had a strong Chicago base. He got both his master's and his PhD from University of Chicago. He was a professor. He worked for Boston University for a number of years in adult education. And then he moved over to North Carolina State and taught adult education there as well. That being said, even though he's considered the father of andragogy, he's not the first person to use the term. The term, believe it or not, goes all the way back from 1833 when Alexander Clapp, who was also an educator, I believe he was German, he coined the actual phrase. But Malcolm Knowles is most famous for being associated with it because he came up with the principles. Everything he learned in his studies, he said, okay, these 6 principles are what drive people to learn as adults. Now, he came up with the first 5 of them in the early 80s, and then in the late 80s added a 6th one. So we're going to take a look at each of these. The first one is the need to know. And basically, adults need to know the value and the why they need to learn something. Adults want to know what's in it for them. They don't just want to be told, you have to learn this. They want to understand the why behind that. What we need to do is we need to make sure we are very clear in explaining the rationale for things. Why we're learning this, why you should be here, why you should want to study it. And another way you can do that is if you're connecting your curriculum, you can say, okay, the last time we were together, or the last time in our committee meeting, we talked about, and again, you are giving them the why. You're explaining why people need to know something. You saw an example of this. I gave this to you when we first came in. I basically said, hey, we're here to look at strategies and understand characteristics. So I front-loaded you with why you should want to be in here. I also include this in each of my course modules. I have an upcoming module, it actually starts Monday, course at Dominican on social media in education. Within my module, I have a why this is important box to start every module. This is not the course learning objectives. This is why did I include this content? So in this particular case, this first one talks about media. I do a unit on media literacy. So why is it important for us to know about media literacy? Because again, it shows teenagers can spend almost 11 hours per day media multitasking. They need to know, they need to learn about how to interpret messaging. So I give them that why. This one came out of my community module on professional learning networks, explaining to why graduate teachers that are practicing educators should know about having a professional learning network. I put these in plain English. I don't make them academic. I don't make them tied to the learning objective. I basically tell them as one teacher to another teacher, hey, this is why I think you should know this. So I'm providing that rationale for them. Next one. Next concept was the learner's self-concept, where Knowles said adult learners expect to be responsible for their own learning on their own timeline. He has a really good quote here where he says, adults have a self-concept of being responsible for their own decisions and their own lives. They resent and resist situations when they feel others are imposing their will on them. And I know we've all felt that in education where we've had a superior or an administration say, you're going to use this new curriculum because I said so. We resent that because, again, it's somebody telling us we have to learn something, even if we don't value it. The more we can actually, or the more our learners, rather, can connect, why should I bother to learn this, to their own personal context, the more open they're going to be to receiving your message. So whether you are in your classroom and you say to your students, listen guys, you're going to need to know math when you walk out of here because ABC, or you're going to have to know how to write a professional resume, so this is why we're learning this, and so on. But as long as you can tie it to their context, they're going to be more open to listening to you and receiving your message. Things we could do here. Choice. Choice is absolutely critical when it comes to teaching adults, because in a sense, choice gives the illusion of choice. I still want you to do this assignment, but instead of me saying to this, do this 5-paragraph assignment and have it on my desk tomorrow, I might say, okay, well, you can record a podcast for your paper, or you could write it as an assignment, or you can come up and give a persuasive speech. I'm still getting them to achieve the objective I want them to, but because I'm giving them a choice, they're more willing to accept that because they, again, can take a little bit of ownership of it. You also want to be multimodal. I can't stress this enough in 2025. We can no longer say, here's the textbook, read the textbook, and have no other resources and present content in no other way. Students of all different generations have different learning styles. We have to be multimodal. That means including links, hyperlinks out to learn other things, videos, articles, podcasts. There are so many different things that you can do to help them with multimodality. Now, it is important to know, even though we're dealing with adults, whether again they're colleagues or they are college students coming in, not all adult learners know how to be self-directed learners. So it's incredibly important to set the path for them to get them started. And here are some examples. This is an example of choice. In the same course that's coming up, we have a unit on digital tattoos, which are learning about your digital footprint and the persona that you create for yourself online. These are graduate students. So in this particular case, I present the content to them, I teach them what they need to know, and then I say, okay, it's a social media course, I'm gonna leave this up to you to demonstrate that you get it. You can do one of these 6 things. And they're allowed to choose their own adventure. They can determine, in this particular case, if they want to do a data mine on themselves and see what they dig up. They can do a privacy check on one of their social media accounts. They can do a social media audit where they can go into one of their accounts and take the last 25 posts and determine what the tone is and how they come off on that. They can create an infographic or a document that shows us privacy settings of a social media platform. They can do a data analysis or a self-guided exploration. Again, all of these put the learning in their hands. They take the content that I'm giving them and then they mold it to what they want it to be. Here's another example that I also do, same course. We do a unit on professional learning networks, and I'm a huge believer in the power of community and learning from other people. So I want them to explore that. So I give them 6 different options of ways that they can explore and extend their professional learning network. And again, I don't care which one of these they do. And this is an interesting thing. I'll give you a metacognitive note on this when I say I don't care what they do. They almost all, I swear, almost all of them end up picking the middle option where they take 3 personality tests. They give the results, they analyze the results, and then they tell in their blog post what they bring to their PLN based on that. And for a while, I was really starting to get, I don't know if angry is the word, frustrated, upset, that they all did this. And I wanted them to explore other things. And I had to pull back and basically say to myself, why does this bother me? Why is it a control thing? It bothers me because, and I've thought about, should I take this out? And then I thought about it more and I thought, they're adults. And if this is what they need to do this week, and they can demonstrate to me that they actually took the time and put into it, then I had to let it go. So I still get irked, but I'm going to leave it in because it works.
Have you thought about moving it so it's not in the center block?
That's an excellent idea. I should totally try and do that. That's a great suggestion. The class starts Monday. I might do that.
I wonder if there's something about gravitation.
Document design, like that middle.
It could be that. It could also be that I think it's an easy out. Oh, I'm gonna take some personality tests. And, I think they think it's less work, but it's really not. Because they have to take 3, they have to screenshot it, they have to analyze it, they have to talk about it. And like one of their other choices, create a PLN infographic. That's not that hard, I don't know. So, but that's a very interesting theory. Thank you for that suggestion. Another example, And again, this is because I love teaching and I love my subject matter and talking about it. This is the structure of what one of my modules looks like. It looks like this for every single module in my course. I've got, the module name. I start with their learning objectives. This right here, this tattoo module, like this week 5, that's where all of their content is, their learning resources, their assignments, and so on. I've got links to rubrics because it's social media and emerging technologies. I've got info on AI. But in every one of my modules, I have an FYI resources page. And that's nothing more than a gigantic list of resources that's tied to our actual module. Because especially with the social media course, there are so many great resources out there that sometimes they want to keep the conversation going, and it's an 8-week course, and we can't keep the conversation going because we got to move on. But what I do is I provide this for them, and I tell them there's no assignment attached to this, but if you're interested and you want to learn more, here's some other things that I think are worth looking at. And in a sense, that is an optional choice. It gives them the option to learn if they want to learn it, or to completely ignore it if they don't want to learn it. I set the path for them in all of my courses. I always have a module that says start here, and it only has 2 pages. The first page is about the course, and I'll give them some background about the course and about my philosophy of the course. And these are courses I developed, if that helps. What the course is, what it's not. And then I always record usually about a 15-minute course overview video that walks them through the entire entire course shell. So they can get in, they know what to click on, where to go. After that page, I have a get started. So here's your background information. Now I'm telling you point blank, do this. And when you're done, do this. When you're done, do this. When you're done, do this. So that's the very first thing that they're going to do when they enter my course. I set the path for them. I don't just say to them when I get the email, I've never gotten an email, believe it or not, since I've done this, saying, where do I begin? And it stops me from being, well, go read the syllabus. It's in the syllabus, you figure it out. Nope, I set the path for them. It's respectful, and at the end of the day, it lightens my load because they're not emailing me asking me how to get started. Next one, the role of the learner's experience. Experience is a big thing with adult learners. What adult learners know and have done already impacts how they learn. This is no surprise to any of us. Experience can impact learning and attention. So past experiences, we take them with us as we learn new content. Not surprisingly, the older we are, the more experience we have. Our experiences with how we perceive school, how we receive school, how we were treated in school, the context we went to school in are all different. I know that's annoying to us as teachers because we've got to rein all that in, especially for all of you that are teaching students that just came from high school, who probably had the path very much directed for them. And now you're asking them to make their own path. It's difficult. And then finally, experience can interfere with new knowledge. If I don't like technology and I have a bad experience with technology, oh, it's been confirmed. I'm not doing that. I'm not using that method because I don't like it, because that's my experience. So it can interfere with new knowledge. Probably my favorite quote from Malcolm Knowles is this one. To children, experience is something that happens to them. To adults, experience is who they are. And I love that quote. It's so prolific. You know, we are a sum of our experiences, and children view experiences as things outside of them. So some things we can do as educators: group discussions, activities, allow learners to share their experience and expertise. This we'll talk about a little bit more when we get into generational learning as well. Allow choice, and again, that choice is based on experience. In some cases, I haven't done this, but in some cases I've seen some choice boards based on level of knowledge. If you need a printer to get back to reminder, you do these things. If you're more advanced, you do these things. And again, we allow choice based on their experience. Case studies are great here, along with role playing, peer teaching, connecting peers with each other is also super important. And also reflection. Again, our experience, we want to make sure that we're reflecting on things. So this is an example of a choice project that I gave as the final project. And basically, it was a very open-ended final project. Basically, in the end, they were going to plan, design, create, and evaluate a project relevant to their learners. It could be a project that was created for their students, for parents, or fellow educators. I didn't care what they did. I gave them a list of examples of things past students had done. All I said was, you have to meet these criteria. Whatever you produce has to have these elements in there. I also gave them the option to work independently or work in a partner. Sometimes I'll get students, graduate students, who are going to school together, and they might have colleagues, they might in their same school that they're taking a class with. If they want to produce something, together, that's perfectly fine. They just need to be able to show me that they did the work of two people. So again, I'm giving them that choice. With that particular project, I set up milestones for them to achieve. In week 4, I tell them you're going to be asked to share ideas for your project, and your classmates are going to comment and give you additional suggestions. Week 6, you're going to be asked to submit a planning template. And then in week 8, you're going to be asked to send me a screenshot or show me your progress, where you're at. So again, it's choice, but I'm still running the show, making sure that they're staying on track. This one is a reflection journal. In this particular case, this was a cohort of teachers. This was my second course with them. That was more or less an extension of the first course. This was a face-to-face class situation. So what I would do is I would present instruction to them, but then each one of them had a reflection journal that is very similar to what we have here at Blackboard. This was just a Google Doc. And after our lecture or whatever we were doing that night in class, they would do their reflection right in their journal. And that was kind of like a private journal between them and me. So again, they had an opportunity to reflect and apply their learning. Next principle is the readiness to learn. That adults become ready to learn when they need to know something or they have to do something in their life. So relevance in this case equals readiness. Many adults prefer to learn things they can use right away or that are going to help their workflow. That's not a surprise. But there are also some adults that want to learn things that enhance their own self-image. So this could be additional certifications in their field or something that's going to help them just grow personally and professionally. How we can support this? Again, as a reminder, you're going to explain your rationale for the things that you're teaching, things that you're using. That helps them know if it's something that they need to know. Examples and real-world application are really important here. Needs assessments as well. Create samples, checklists, anything that's going to help ease their workload. That's also, I want to stop on that one for a minute. I'm going to show you some examples of that. In my case, I'm teaching graduate students, but even at the undergraduate level, you helping ease some of the load off of them is going to make them more excited to learn with you. You want to create opportunities to grow and reflect, and if you can, invite guest speakers. So how I've done some of those.
I'm sorry, can I ask real quick?
Yep.
Can you elaborate more about needs assessment?
So surveys.
Okay.
So readiness to learn. So in some cases, it could be surveys. I'm trying to think of the most recent one. So I did one. So what they ready to learn when they need to know what they want to do. So one of our courses right now at Michigan State, we have this About Me section. It's not a survey, but it's an actual section in their feedback notebook where they tell the basic things about them, what they're teaching, this and that, or what their role is, because they're not all teachers there. And some of the questions we ask, why did you sign up for this course? What do you expect to learn? What's something you're nervous about? Another thing that we put in there, which has been really, really big, is we've also put in a note asking, is there anything going on in your life that's going to interfere with work here? Did I mention this before? I mentioned this, I think, in another presentation. Like one of my students right now, her dad's in hospice care. I wouldn't have known that. And this could be me knowing that now. When she says to me, hey, Nicole, can I get 2 more nights? And that happened once. She had said, I'm going to visit my dad. Can I get an extension? I'm more likely to grant that extension because I have that background information. So yeah, needs assessment. That could even be, what do you think in my course is going to help you in a future job? And you get an idea of the mindset that they have when they're coming in. Okay, this one, you'll see it's just a small video that's playing through. So I ended up last winter picking up a course for a fellow instructor on 20 on distance learning before I actually had this job. And I wasn't familiar with the course or the materials they were using. So this particular case, they had to purchase a companion book that went along with the course, and everything was tied to the book. I went through, and for me to learn the course, I created a companion note document for the students where I pulled out what I thought were key things in all of the chapters. I had key questions. I had areas for them to put notes. This was completely optional. This is not something they had to turn into me. But I was also realistic that they weren't all going to read the book, and they weren't all going to read the chapters. So by me creating this for them and helping to set the path and say, all right, for chapter 4, they could go to this, pull up chapter 4, see the main points of that chapter, and then go and look for things. That's one example of creating materials to help the students. Real world application. In another of my courses, they have to design professional portfolios, not school websites, for their students or their parents, professional portfolios, where I require them to write an educational philosophy. And they have to curate an online library, a print library, and so on. This is a resource that they can use throughout their career. So again, I'm giving them that rationale. This is something you can add to throughout your career. I had one student come back to me and tell me how he used it when he applied for a library position at a town library. He used his portfolio. And that was so cool, to hear that he actually did use it. So again, anything that you can do to tie to their real world either expectations or experience is powerful. This is another real world application. In this particular course, we were doing a unit on active learning. So I taught about active learning, and then I created a giant Google slide deck, gave them instructions. I said, here are 2 lists, and both of these lists have examples of active learning strategies. I wanted them to then come in here and again, fill out the 4 categories. One is they had to name their strategy, they had to explain their strategy, give examples of how it can be used, and then provide additional resources. So this was one option that they had to do, or they could have done a different assignment altogether. But at the end of this was an open Google slide deck. So they walked out and they had a slide deck with 20 examples of active learning, additional resources they can already use, and in some cases, examples and photos that they can see. So that's a real world application that they could then take back to their classrooms and put into place. Another one, materials to help students. Going back to that one that I taught on distance learning where I made that companion document. Throughout that I think was a 10-week course, 10 or 12 weeks. throughout that, they would share resources, things that they were learning, websites that they went to. I would collect all of those, and I would pop them into Wakelet. Wakelet is basically a bookmarking service. And then at the end of the semester, in my final email to them, I sent them the email and said, throughout the course, I've collected all the resources y'all mentioned, and I put them in one giant collection. As more, I hope you can use these moving forward. So again, materials to help students. And then, no, this is the second to last one. This is one that I did actually just last week. We, at the course, I have two right now at Michigan State. The one course, we had a synchronous session where we were going to be discussing a charter school instance, and they had a study, a newspaper article, a blog post, and a PDF that they needed to read prior to coming to the sync session. So the morning, I think it was the morning or the day before the sync session, I took all 4 of the resources and I popped them into Notebook LM. And I asked Notebook LM to create a summary document and to create an audio podcast on those 4. And then I emailed it to them and I said, hey, FYI, if you need to catch up and refresh on the materials from, this week that we're going to talk about, you can either listen to it or you can read this summary document. And again, help set the path for them. So when they came into the sync session, they were prepared. And then this is the last one, I think, on this one, talking about guest speakers. This was a course that I taught. This one was a Dominican leadership course. And again, it wasn't my initial course that I developed. I was filling in for someone else. And these were teachers, coaches, people in education that were striving to be leaders, looking for administrative degrees. So in my previous role before here, I had a wide range of connections throughout the state of Illinois. I reached out to friends and colleagues that I knew and said, hey, teaching this course, I've got a survey. If you can answer my survey questions, it would be appreciated. These were all leaders, and then I took their answers and I created infographics of their answers. In every module, I presented somebody different. So in this particular case, someone they should know that was a school superintendent. This middle one was an assistant regional superintendent. And then this one was a friend of mine who was the president of Truman College. And they all just filled out my survey. And this was a way for me to bring guest speakers in without reaching out to all these extremely busy people and saying, could you come talk to my class about leadership? They can still see that in this way. Okay, orientation to learning, adult learners. This is no shock to anyone in the room. We're life-centered, we are task and problem-centered, and we have a ton of different things that are competing for our time. We're all just not sitting around saying, what should I do? How we can help with that. Incorporate real-life scenarios, case studies again. Remember, there's a lot of crossover here. Some collaborative group projects so that some of the work is being shared. Offering micro-learning opportunities since adults are busy. Micro-learning are small bits of information. 10-minute lessons. They could be sequential. But again, giving them set stop times. And also, and this is probably the hardest one, and it's still hard for me at times, assuming positive intent. A lot of times the student doesn't do an assignment. We're thinking, oh, that kid's so lazy. I can't believe he didn't do my work. When we might not know if he had to work a double shift last night or take care of a sick family member. Are they lazy sometimes? But a lot of times they're not. So I still, even teaching graduate students, have to remind myself sometimes, assume positive intent. I'm not assuming anybody's out to get me, by not doing my assignment. And that's hard. That one takes a while to master. And then the last guiding principle of Andrew Gogies is motivation. And not a surprise, as we get older, our motivation shifts from external rewards, like the teacher giving us a sticker. We're saying, good job, Jimmy. And they transfer into internal rewards. Now, that being said, external rewards are still good. So if you can bring them candy or you can pull Judy aside and say, dude, that was an awesome paper. Those still are effective and they still work. Look for ways to leverage motivation, asking them what's something you'd like to get better at. That could be in a needs assessment. What's a skill right now that you'd like to learn? Make sure you're offering engaging activities and also competition. People, believe it or not, like competition. Provide choice. We talked about that as well. Help them identify personal and professional goals. Again, that comes back to personal and professional goals, brings them back to them wanting to learn something on their own. Okay, so let me check my time. Okay, we are going to not pause and ponder and turn and talk. We're going to keep going because I want to move into the generational stuff, which won't take too much longer. But before we do that, what we're going to do is, again, remind you why we're here, why we're talking about generational research or generational learning. Understanding students can help us reach them, and also understanding general characteristics can help strengthen our relationships, because we might find something that is different for us than it is for a different generation, and understanding that is a good thing. Now, to do that, I am going to give each of you a small bag. And in the bag, you're going to see a whole bunch of cutouts. There are 4 different title sections. So if you're millennials, Gen Xers, baby boomers, and Gen Zers, these are your 4 categories. You're going to put these here, and then everything else in here, you're going to put them under a category. Which generation does this apply to? We're going to take about 10 minutes for you to do that. No cheaters, no using your phones, no calling your kids. I'm not going to put on a timer. I'll just run a timer on my phone. as we're winding down. So maybe take about 2 more minutes. Speed it up. Maybe past 1 minute. I love how I saw just about everybody pick a couple up and then swap them. Okay, so let's see how you did. Our baby boomers. The moon landing was their social marker. Their influencers are experts. You have the cassette tape for baby boomers. Their learning style, very structured. Telephone was their main means of communicating. And they used slang like be cool, groovy, peace, and boob tube. Okay. Our Gen Xers, our influence were practitioners. We, and I can attest from personal experience, yes, still call people dude, and I'm in my 50s. Say dude, wicked, rad, or as if. Our social marker was the stock market crash. We preferred email as our communication methods. We moved away from the telephone, went into email. We like to be participative, which again, you're participating right now. And the Walkman was our mode of music. Millennials, Gen Ys, text messaging. They transitioned out of email, they got to texting. We were introduced to the iPod. Their social marker was also financial. It was the global financial crisis. They're most influenced by their peers, and they like to work interactively. They like to engage interactively. Some of their slang, what's up, bling, bang, and dope. And then finally, our newest generation, most of who's here at Triton, Spotify is how they receive their music. Forums, so Reddit's, social forums, communities like that are their influence. They communicate through social media. They like multimodal learning. Huh, fancy that. September 11th was their social marker, and they use terms like fam, bet, and yeet. And again, emojis came into place. My son still, he's 24, he's a police officer, and he still says bet constantly. So I can attest that's true. Now, what's very interesting also, and when I've done this in the past, I didn't do it today because we only had an hour, we'd have a quiz. Each generation, even though these Gen Zers not so much, they gave us some awesome candy. The baby boomers, spot on. They gave us fantastic candy. The information that came from there came from a former version of this infographic on Gen Z. Mark McCrindle is a generational researcher out of Australia, and he puts together infographics about different generations. This is where that came from. So he has a breakdown, and I've got a link to this in your handout, of all of the different generations. He includes builders. I did not have the builders in my list. But that's the generational breakdown of different people and how they like to learn, how they receive messages, who influences them, and so on. So my main question is, was there anybody that got them all correct? Exactly. Because we make assumptions about people, and also we make assumptions about other generations based on our ideas, our interpretations, the experiences that we've had, and the bias that we hold. It's also important to remember generational studies are guidelines. They are general characteristics. Generations are normally considered people that grow up within the same societal structure between 15 to 20-year time gaps. But we're finding that those gaps are shifting because the human culture is not following the set pattern that it used to in the past. Get married, have kids, do this in this sequential order. So again, these are general characteristics. Not everyone is going to exhibit them. And then finally, understanding and knowing about these generalizations can actually help us the way we interact and approach not only our students, but our colleagues as well. So in our less than 10 minutes, let's take a look at some things that we know about each generation. Our baby boomers right now are between the ages of 61 and 79. Their coming of age moment happened during massive social change, civil rights movement, Vietnam. They have an incredibly strong work ethic, and they are very loyal. I can tell you, I stayed, and I'm not a baby boomer, I'm a Gen Xer, but I stayed in Chicago Public Schools for 25 years. Where now people hop after a couple years all over the place. They have a pay your dues mentality, which is much as what I had. When I started in CPS, it was not enjoyable. It was not fun. I was not in a healthy, warm school environment, but I didn't think to leave because I thought, well, this is it. I got to make it work. This is my job. Where toward the end of my time in CPS, I watched colleagues walk into that chaotic situation, and even in the middle of the year, say, I'm out of here. And it was too hard, and they just quit. So different generations. Baby boomers are very confident. They're independent, and many of them, no surprise, are in leadership positions today. They're used to performance feedback. They want to know what they're doing and how they're doing it well. Gen Xers, we are between the age of 49 and 60. We were the first set of latchkey kids due to either divorce or our moms going to work, which wasn't always the case before us. We are very self-reliant because of that. We're also very cynical. We have a strong work ethic. In our social markers, we enjoyed MTV, but also the space shuttle was new when we were coming up, as was the AIDS epidemic, which was the first big worldwide epidemic for us. We are very goal-oriented, and we like independence, and we also like a good challenge. We want straightforward and honest feedback. We don't want you to beat around the bush. Just get to it and let's get going. Then we have our millennials. They are now between the ages of 30 and 48. They are said to be, and I couldn't find current research because research is always a couple years in the rear. They're said to be near 75% of the workforce right now. Their coming of age involved rapid technological advances, internet, email, mobile phones. This generation grew up with that. Their social markers included 9/11, Columbine, the start of the school shootings, and very early social media. They like their independence, but millennials also need a little bit of extra guidance. They need some direction. And they want the dream job. They don't want any old job. They want the dream job right away. And then we've got our youngest generation, a lot of what we're dealing with here at Triton. They're between the ages of anywhere from 15 to 29. They are the fastest emerging generation of employees and consumers. What's very interesting is a lot of the Gen Zs will find themselves in leadership positions because there are so many baby boomers and some of us Gen Xers that are retiring that there aren't enough people to fill that gap. So it's very interesting to find about them. YouTube was big for them, Amazon, smartphones, and influencers. They like snack media. Snack media, super short bits. That's our TikTok, our Instagram. We just keep scrolling, we keep going, moving along. For them, terrorism and gun violence in schools is very commonplace. They grew up with that. They're often very mobile. They change jobs a lot. This is so interesting, too. The research has told us that many of them grew up too fast. In some instances, because of the school violence, because of the smartphones. So many of them seem to miss out on childhood and they tend to try and stave off adulthood as long as they can. I'm sure many of you could probably name a Gen Zer or two that still doesn't drive. And at 16, we were at the door, the minute it opened to get our driver's license. They're holding off on being independent. Many of this generation also go to college and then they go back home to mom and dad. And then also, surprisingly, a quarter of them have a side hustle. So they have a part-time, they call it the gig economy, whether they are doing a Grubhub delivering food or they are selling something on Etsy, they've got a side hustle going on. Wait, did you get it? Did you get it? All right, so how we can support this generation, because again, you are dealing with all of these generations as colleagues and also your students as well. Our baby boomers, don't discount them because of their age. Realize that they do have technology, they do use technology, and they do have digital devices. Leverage the experience that they bring to your organization or your classes. They don't want training, show them how something that you give them can help them in their job. Talk about the big picture. Gen Xers, us, don't discount us because of our years of experience. Show us ways that technology especially can help, but not change what we're already doing, but it can help us. Show us how we can expand our professional learning networks and continue to learn with others. Help us a little bit with collaboration and also recognize their independence. Please don't micromanage us. We like to be independent. We know what we're doing. We don't want to be micromanaged. Our millennials, don't discount them just because they're young. Don't assume that they actually know how to integrate technology natively. They know how to consume. It doesn't mean they know how to create or to use technology to help them learn. And because of the technology, sometimes you might think they're not paying attention to you. Sometimes they're not paying attention to you. Maybe because it's not engaging or they don't know what they're doing. Other times they might not look like they're engaging with you, but they actually are. Nurture their ideas, help them through the process, and offer them resources. Millennials want a lot of resources. And then finally, our youngest generation, please don't discount them just because they're new or especially new to colleges. Help them follow through, help them learn scheduling, communicating as an adult. I still have graduate students that start out their emails, hey, and it's mind-boggling at the graduate level, so I can only imagine what you're getting. Help them build their PLNs from the ground up. They are coming new into their adult lives. They need help building professional networks around them. Use mixed media. Please use multimodal resources. Help them with interpersonal connections. That's that. Don't email me at hey. And I just call me Nicole. Hi, Nicole. Hey, Nicole. Even hey, Nicole, I could take. And then finally, help ideas become reality for our Gen Zers. So, wrapping it up, tips for all of them. It's always important for you to remember context explains conduct. The generational markers, the things that we know, the experiences we come in with, our past school experiences explain our conduct. Build relationships, colleagues and students. Say their name. Believe it or not, there's research out there that says we get a hit of dopamine when someone says our name. So if you have the opportunity in classes, even if they're walking in, to call your student's name by their name, do it. Build trust, keep your conversations private, positive if you can, and student focused. Provide examples and anecdotes. Again, bite-sized learning. Don't give them a document that's 40 pages and say, read this by tomorrow. You could give them a document that's 40 pages and say, I want you to make sure before you walk in tomorrow, you read pages 3 through 6. Anytime, anywhere, resources that they can access on mobile devices. They are mobile. They want to be on their devices, so we want to make sure they can access information. Information, multimodal, again, always start with your why. Try and give them a real life situation or, hey, this is why we're including this. And then finally, focus on workflow. Help take things off their plate when you can. Okay, so as you're leaving today, this is not something you'll answer for me, it's something you need to think about yourself. Think about if there's something you're going to stop doing, something that you might slow down and pull back on a little bit, or something you're going to start doing based on what we talked about. And that is it. So thank you for coming and hanging out with me today. Any questions? Okay. All right. Well, I hope I can see some of you back for the Gogies.